shout. Remember all those nights when I used to sleep on the couch. Well, I guess I never told you that deep down all I really wanted was for you to come and hold me. Well, I guess you'll never know. When I was soaring high, clenched your feet on the ground, waiting I would start to fly, waiting I would come back down. Well, I guess I never told you that deep down all I really wanted was for you to come and fly with me. Well, I guess you'll never know. Well, I guess you'll never know. This song is called "You'll Never Know." If you are a slightly conscious supporter on Patreon or on Buy Me a Coffee, you already have you already knew this song. You already have the demo of this song that has not only piano but also electric guitar and bass guitar and vocals, of course. This song, like I said, is called "You'll Never Know." And this song also sets the theme for today, which is communication. Okay, so today we'll be in on this very first episode. So of course there was episode 0, but episode 0 was about my journey through consciousness. Okay, and on this episode we are going to dive deep into my songs. And this song again was written 3 years ago. So I wrote this song while I was in therapy and I was beginning to own up some of my issues and some things that I also needed to work upon. So I will start with the lyrics, okay? So the lyrics of this song: remember all those fights when we used to scream and shout. Remember all those nights when I used to sleep on the couch. Well, I guess I never told you that deep down, all I really wanted was for you to come and hold me, but I guess you'll never know. When I was soaring high, you clenched your feet upon the ground, waiting I would stop to fly, hoping I would come back down. Well, I guess I never told you that deep down, all I ever wanted was for you to come and fly with me. Well, I guess you'll never know. So these are the lyrics. So one thing that I really like about this song, and again, taking in consideration it was written 3 years ago, I was in a different place that I am today. But one thing that I really like about this song is that there's some owning up for issues here. So on the verses, it has a structure that on the verses, I'm talking about issues. And then on the chorus, I'm actually owning up for what was really behind those issues and what was really missing. Because usually when emotions come and there are fights or arguments, usually there's a deeper reason. It's never from the reason why you're fighting about, what you think you're fighting about. Usually when things bottle up, and it was in my case, fights would come out of nowhere for very, very small reasons. And of course, that happened not because of those small reasons. It happened because there was deeper issues that weren't being addressed. So, starting in the first verse, we have remember all those fights when we used to scream and shout. So, this is, of course, aggressive communication and dysfunctional communication. And then we have remember all those nights when I used to sleep on the couch. And this one is really big because this is a form of emotional punishment. And emotional punishment is the same thing as psychological violence. And I know these are strong words for sleeping on the couch, but basically, forms of emotional punishment are giving the silent treatment to another person, ignoring another person, keeping your physical distance as sleeping on the couch, withholding intimacy is also another form of emotional punishment. And usually, people, and one thing that I've been noticing, it's weird because on the point I am right now, most of my friends are on relationships, and now I'm pretty much the only one single. But sometimes I see some of my friends like using the silent treatment, and it just baffles me how, and they use it without even realizing how dysfunctional this is. This is not a way to treat anyone, right? And and then we have the chorus where I say, well, I guess I never told you that deep down all I really wanted was for you to come and hold me, but I guess you'll never know. So, owning up the real reason behind the fights and emotional punishment here. And I really like it that, I'm mentioning that I I didn't feel I didn't feel acknowledged. There was lack of physical affection, and also acknowledging that I was never able to communicate that those were the real issues. So this is really big. And well, I was doing therapy back then, so it was a form of acknowledging that, yeah, maybe I should have said that instead of fighting or instead of going to the couch, but I just didn't know better. And that's the thing about being unconscious. And when you are unconscious, you are just running your programming, and we'll be talking about that later, about our programming, what is our programming and where it comes from. Okay, so then the second part, the second verse. When I was soaring high, you clenched your feet upon the ground, waiting I would stop to fly, hoping I would come back down. So this was actually a huge issue for me, because I felt many times put down when I was happy, and I felt criticized and over criticized when I just wanted to be cheered upon, and I felt not understood or not valued, and it's huge for me because on this point, I remember I wrote this verse and I was thinking about sometimes that I was celebrating and I was having, I was already um, doing music full time, and sometimes I would get a job that I really like, or sometimes I would get I don't know, stuff. And when I was on the app that shan't be named, and some of you guys remember that time, sometimes I would land the top 10 and we get money prizes for it, and I would be happy for it. And I always felt like my partner back then, he was never available to celebrate with me. It was always like, oh, that's not a big deal, like, that's not like, why are you so happy, and things like that. And it was really hard for me. And then on the chorus, I say, well, I guess I never told you that deep down all I ever wanted was for you to come and fly with me. Well, I guess you'll never know. So here again, I'm owning up the real reason behind the frustration, like, because what I really wanted is just to have someone to celebrate the good times with, to celebrate, to feel joy, but also to, maybe I never said it the right way, or maybe I wasn't able to communicate that um, in a functional way. So it's a very powerful song, even though it's a simple song. It's powerful. I feel it's powerful for me. Um, so we'll talk about more about communication and the road I made since I since I wrote this song and before this song. So, Communication is the foundation of any interaction, right? And here, of course, there are many forms of communication, but I will be talking more about I'll be talking about language, word communication, spoken or written communication, words. And between human beings, communication using this form of language or words is usually the dominant, right? And so, one thing that, and I learned this recently, and I found this very interesting, is that the problematic of language is that there's both mind and emotions involved, if you think about it, because you have your mind involved in the choice of the words or the phrasing, for example, and you have emotions involved in the choice of tone used, right? And then you have, like, the same word can have different meanings for different people, can have different meanings in different times or places in the sentence used. And let's not forget that two people that had a conversation can later remember the very same conversation in totally different ways. So much for logic, right? So once we understand that the way we perceive this world is always molded by the view of our egos, and I've talked about ego on the episode 0, okay? It becomes easier to see that, in fact, there's not a concrete or true view or right words or tone. There's no right and wrong, actually. I mean, there's just the unique perception of every human being because each of us is different, right? I mean, going back to the conversation that two people remember in a different way. If you have a camera there recording the conversation, I assure you, if you hear both people, if you hear one person and then another person talking about that conversation, and then you go see the conversation, none of those views from those people would be the real thing. There will always be some words that they weren't used, some things that were omitted. It's just because the way we perceive things, we are not abstract like a computer. We are not like a computer that just absorbs everything the way it is. We are deeper than that. And the way our brains function, it's totally different than that. So that's just the thing. Okay, there's no right or wrong. There's just different perceptions. And allowing this and knowing this, allows us to adopt a different point of view. Not only we become aware of our own triggers, and what are triggers, it's basically things that set up our reactions, okay? Words, expressions, tones, and we also become more forgiving of reactions or misunderstandings on the other hand from the person we're talking to or someone who's talking to us. So I really wanted to, for you guys, and this is the challenge. Of course, you don't have to do this if you don't feel comfortable, but I would really love if you guys could share one trigger that you have in the chat. Like, what sets you off? For instance, when someone is being rude to you, if someone calls you a name, when you're in traffic, there are many people who get set off in traffic. Like when someone uses a specific word or a sentence or a tone. And don't be ashamed because we all have triggers. This is something that it's universal. It's universal. Actually, if you are aware of your triggers, that's actually something to celebrate because many people don't even know what their triggers are. One cool example of a trigger in a movie, I'm sure you guys know Back to the Future. And Marty, the main character, has a very interesting trigger, which is when someone calls him chicken, right? If someone, "Oh, are you chicken?" And then he totally loses his head and he does whatever the person was challenging him to do. So that's a trigger. And actually, the movie has a really cool way of showing up what happens if you get totally unconscious because one of your triggers is that Marty, and spoiler alert, Marty gets into an accident after being called a chicken, and then he engages on a car race, and he ends up having an accident, and he hurts his wrist in a way that he's never able to play the guitar again, which is something that he absolutely loves to do. So this is a great lesson, isn't it? One of my triggers is setting boundaries with someone. It's a very, very big trigger for me. It still is, even though I'm getting better at it, it still is. For instance, when someone does or says something that I don't feel comfortable with, and that's not my trigger, okay? If someone does something that I don't like, for instance, if I'm in a room with the TV on and somebody with the TV off, and somebody walks in the same room and turns on the TV without even saying anything or even asking me, that's something I don't like. It's not a trigger. I don't get set up by that, but I don't like it. It's a preference. So what triggers me is actually it's having that conversation with that person saying, "Can you please not do that?" That's what triggers me. It's really, really hard for me when I have to call someone out on something they said or did that I didn't like. So after owning your triggers, the next step is understanding why you have those triggers. Like, where do they come from? Why, for example, for me, why is it so hard for me to set boundaries when someone does something that I don't like? So in my case, and of course, this is something I did. This is not easy. It's something usually because why is it not easy? Because usually these triggers come from your childhood, and for me, it's triggering because not only of my parents, but actually on the relationship it was the same thing. It was just every time I tried to set a boundary, um, it was, I grew up with watching my parents setting boundaries, screaming at each other. So that's not the right way to set a boundary. So what we get is like people would get screaming, would get offensive, angry with each other, and then there was some silent treatment or emotional distance. And I grew up watching that. And so as a result, I used to set boundaries that way too, because that's what I saw my parents do. And as kids, we just learn with our parents, right? Um, and so I used to do the same thing. I used to scream and shout my boundaries. And of course, this was during my unconscious years. So up until basically I was 30. Um, and usually what happens is that I wouldn't set a boundary right away. And then I would bottle up, bottle up, bottle up. And then they would come out in these great emotional bursts. So as I started owning up and started my journey towards awareness, I began to be more aware of the moments when I didn't feel comfortable with someone's words or actions, so we wouldn't build up. So I would make an effort to try to talk right away when something was bothering me. But even so, and this still happens today a lot less because of course now I'm aware of it, and when you're aware, things started getting easier. But even today, anytime I try to talk about, something that I don't like, when someone has an action or a word that I don't like, it's like I feel a physical reaction on my body. My heart starts racing like crazy. My throat usually closes up, and this is actually something that you guys can do when you start being aware of your triggers, and a trigger happens, and you remain conscious, so you remain present, you don't let your emotion build up or take over you, but you can feel it in your body. And each of us has triggers on different parts on their body. In my case, it's my heart and my throat. Totally. My throat closes up, my voice starts coming from a really low place. And now that doesn't happen anymore, but when I started getting this in check, I would start crying because the effort of trying to remain calm, it was so overwhelming that I would start crying because it was I had to do a physical effort to remain conscious. That's how hard it was for me. So this is not easy. It's not easy to face your triggers, and it doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes you go back to your conditioned patterns even when you are aware of your triggers. Sometimes there are points that you lose your cool, and you let the emotion overwhelm you. But what happens is that you start regaining clarity and presence sooner and sooner each time. So you find it easy to apologize also because you own your triggers. You understand that it's not, and going back to the Future again, We were talking about Back to the Future. Uh, the fault of Marty's accident, it's his own fault. It's not because the other guy called him chicken. It's because he allowed the other guy to get to him. He allowed the other guy, the Beef, it was Beef. Yeah, it was Beef's son, I think. He allowed Beef's son to get into his head and use his own trigger against him. So, like I said, we learn to communicate from our parents at first. And let's face it, no one's perfect, and our parents aren't perfect. We aren't perfect. So as kids, we just absorb everything. And it's important to point out, and this is very important. This is something that I learned also more recently, is that trauma perpetuates themselves in two ways. Okay. And a trigger is a trauma. It's the same thing. So usually traumas and triggers perpetuate themselves by you mimicking your parents' behavior. So that's what happened in my case. You know, I used to talk about my feelings, yes, but I would scream and shout. It was not, of course, the best way to talk about them. Or you can also go to the extreme opposite. For instance, if you grew up in a house that your parents would scream and shout, you can go the other way. You can avoid talk about your feelings absolutely, and or when you try to talk about it, you lose your voice. This can happen. And it's easy to see this in more extreme causes about, for instance, physical violence. People that grew up on houses that had physical violence, they either become abusers, or they become victims. So either they become the person who also hits other people, or they become the person that will tolerate violence from his or her partner. And this is something that is not an assumption. This is what happens. And in case of psychological violence, it's just the same. It's just another form of trauma. But usually we just focus on these more aggressive forms of trauma, and we ignore these more subtle forms of trauma, which is screaming, shouting, giving the silent treatment. It's the same. It's just the same. So owning your triggers doesn't mean allowing others to mistreat you. This is very, very important. Okay. So it just means that you own up your reaction when someone uses a trigger, because most people don't know that you have a trigger, right? So, for instance, imagine if someone is being rude to you, and that's a trigger. Like for my dad, that's a trigger. If someone is rude to him, he loses it. He absolutely loses it. But really in extreme. And he's the first. He owns his trigger. He knows that. We had some interesting conversations about that, me and my dad, because I think he noticed my difference, because I used to be very, very overreactive like he was. And he noticed the difference in me in the last couple of years. So he started like, oh, I wish I could be like cool as you are, but oh gosh, I get so overwhelmed and I cannot. It's a huge trigger, and he cannot stay conscious through it. But he just accepts it. The thing is, he accepts that that's something he cannot change. And truth is, yes, you can. Yes, you can change. So, but of course, that doesn't mean that you have to tolerate people being rude to you. You just own the reaction. So, for example, and this happened the other day, I went to the supermarket and one employee was rude to me, and this happened. So, if someone is being rude to you, for example, you first understand that if someone is being rude to you, they are not being rude to you. They are rude. Okay? Some people are just rude, and this is part of their conditioning. Probably her parents or his parents are also rude. So now he's projecting that rudeness onto you. But he's a rude person. It's not personal. Don't make it personal. Don't make it about you. It's about them. They are being rude. Okay? So knowing this, and if you remember this, it's a lot easier for you to remain present, and it's easier for you to not taking it personally and not reacting to the rudeness. So once you begin to you begin to being able to remain calm, you actually start getting the message behind all the rudeness. Because if that person is communicating to you, um if that person is communicating to you, is being rude to you, is communicating you something, probably he's passing or she is passing you a message, right? So what is the message, if there's one? Okay, some people are just, but usually that's crazy people, and there are examples of crazy people on the street that just start screaming out of you out of nowhere. But that's different. Okay, that's different. That's an ego elevated form. That person is no longer here. Is just so, let's not even go there. But imagine there's a person that is being rude to you. What happened? Did you do something that might have triggered their rudeness? And I'm not saying there's ever a valid reason to be rude, because there isn't. Okay, but I'm just saying that you should own up your words or actions independently of other people's reaction. Okay, so imagine that this person is being rude to you because you accidentally bumped into him or her. So in this case, you just plainly ignore the rudeness and you apologize. You just apologize. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Are you okay? Yeah, sorry. And that's it. And usually that stops the rudeness if you do that. So, like I was saying, that happened in the supermarket to me the other day. I went to the supermarket and I always ask I go to the butchery and get some meat, and I always ask them to divide the meat into smaller bags so I can just put it on the refrigerator, on the freezer straight away. And I always do this, and they always do it. All employees do this, and they never told me anything about it. But this lady was like, "I don't have to do that," and she was really rude. And I was like, "I was asking you a favor. I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm just asking if you can, please. Um, but I don't have to do this, and this is not my job to separate the meat for you." And again, I said, "Yeah, because I understand what she was saying to me, but I didn't want her to feel, I didn't want to force her to do anything. I was just asking her a favor. If she didn't want to do it, and then I said it to her, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. That's fine. I was just asking you a favor, but that's totally fine if you don't want to do it." And she turned around to prepare the meat, and she had like really bad face, and she did it anyway. And then she gave me the bags, and I thanked her for it, and I went away. And I wasn't rude back, and I ended up getting what I wanted anyway. Then I do something is that I keep my cool in the interaction, but then when I walk away, sometimes I hear my ego in my brain starts talking to me. This is what I struggle with, and something that I'm trying to get under control. Is that again? Why was she rude? Oh my gosh, was it so hard? And like, why? And this is keeping the conversation alive, the interaction alive in your head. And this is something that there's absolutely no point, but it's something that I do, and I'm aware of it and trying to control it. Just sharing with you guys. So let me read all these comments because I want to read that. Humanity triggers me. It starts when I'm standing at the supermarket checkout and they don't move there. They don't move forward so I can put my things on the conveyor belt. I know what you mean. Yes, there are many examples. Most people bother me because, in my opinion, they are not they are not fit to lead. So, what I read for that, Ollie, correct me if I'm wrong. What I read is it bothers you when people are not aware of your needs. Usually that happens when we are, because some people are more aware of their environment than others. Okay, and for many years that used to piss me out immensely as well, because I was thinking, why don't they move? Why aren't they even, I'm here, like, why are they, don't they see, can't they see that they are not like um I'm failing the English word. Anyway, so most people are just too busy in their heads or with their phones now to notice other people. And usually when we are, and I'm like that as well, when we are more considerate towards others, it bothers us when other people aren't as considerate to us as well. And this is one of my dad's triggers as well, and I learned that trigger from him. We are people that are very considerate, and we are very aware of other people and other people's needs. So usually when we are, for instance, on the checkout, uh, we know that people are coming to put the groceries, so we pay attention, so we get out of their way. But most people don't have that in mind. It's not personal. It's just that they are on another world. When that happens to me, usually I just touch the shoulder and like, can you excuse me, please? And usually it's when you do that, usually they're like, oh, I'm sorry, because they don't even notice you're there. So the thing is, it's also our job to communicate when someone is not being attentive to us. So we have to own up for that. Um, so still talking about the, how I managed to turn this around, and about this being kind, for instance, is you have to ask yourself, like, what kind of person you see yourself, or would you like to be? And for example, if you see yourself as a kind person, then be kind no matter what. And if somebody is being rude to you, use these situations or these challenges as opportunities for practicing kindness. So this way, you are actually not being kind for the person who is being rude to you, because let's face it, no one wants to be kind to someone who is being rude to them, right? It's just human nature. No, but why was I kind to that employee on the supermarket? Because that's the type of person that I choose to be. And it doesn't matter if someone is being rude to me. No, I'll be kind. I will not be rude back, because that's not the person I am, and that's not the person I want to be. So basically, it's remembering that you aren't responsible for other people's words or actions, right? But you can choose to be responsible for your words and actions. So there's no point, like, if someone is being rude, somebody's being crazy, or, what's the matter? If you get pissed off, what does that help? Absolutely nothing. So it's just some advice and some realizations and reflections that I had that really helped me out um, with that. So owning up your triggers is basically everything you need to be able to communicate in a healthy way, because it's just that. And voice when someone does something that bothers you, voice it. Don't bottle it, because everything you keep inside, it comes out sooner or later. So voice it, but you can voice it in a nice way. That's the challenge, right? Voicing it in the right way, or just let it go. It's something small, just learn to let go, and realize this. Egos and people are just not paying attention. They are just busy with their thoughts and emotions and bottle up repressions, and it's just we take things sometimes too personally, and it's not personal. It's definitely not personal.